Hey guys, welcome back to my channel for an all new episode recap of today's Days of Our Lives, July 23rd, 2025. So we continue off with Ari and her mom and little T in the mix. Ari's bonding with him and telling him how she missed him, since she's been gone. Gabby is happy to have her back home after all that ordeal, and she just believed that the hospital should have kept her a little longer. But, Ari again, said, Mom, you don't need to worry. They said, I'm fine. So, she talks about how she's disappointed in herself, and she disappointed at Doug, but mostly in herself for even deal with him. And she tells her mom that, look, you were right about him. I should have stayed away from him, and you can tell me that you told me so. So Gabby said, no, now is not the time. I just want to tell you that I love you, right? And I'm glad that you're home safe. So she asks her, if she can go out to just deal with something. So she's like, are you going to confront Doug? So she's like, how did you know? So she's saying, because you and I are so much alike. And I know that's what I would have done, give him hell. So she said, can I do so? So she said, yes, I'm going to be right by your side. So she said, no, it would be lame if you were there. So I need to handle this on my own. And she said, okay, I have eyes and ears there at the Brady pub. So just tell me that, after that, you will not deal with that guy ever again. So she said, trust me, I don't intend to, right? So back to this whole drama with Sophia and Tate and Brady. So Sophia comes and tells Tate that, look, I went into labor, I gave birth to the, baby girl, and the adopted parents happened to be there, and whoops, the little girl is now in their care, and, she's gone, everything is signed off. So all that's waiting is for him to sign off on the papers or the fake papers, right? So Tate is livid because Tate said, look, we've been on this from the get-go. We've been doing everything together. It was supposed to be an open adoption. I didn't even get to meet the parents, the lawyer, nothing at all. And you expect me to sign this paper? So she said, look, everything was so sudden and we wanted to move forward with our lives. We already having everything going so wrong so far and screwed up so far. So I just wanted this to just go smoothly. And, you weren't answering your phone at the time. And, I was in a strange city. I had to give bread around strange people. And it just happened, right? So he said, look, I'm sorry I didn't answer your call at the time, but Holly and I were in trouble. They were kidnapped, so she didn't know about that. So she's like, are they okay? So he's like, yeah, they're fine and everything. They're safe. But, I just feel like, you couldn't wait on me one day. Like, you just, So he's just a bundle of emotions. He's angry. As understandable because, it feels as if, she made all these decisions. She cut him out of, his kid's life and, not think about how he would feel, how his family would feel. And I think that's really unconscionable of her, whether or not it's fake or not. Taking that, they had a son together. She didn't think about, okay, maybe he wanted a chance to meet him or to, actually raise the child because she doesn't have to be a part of the picture. She can just, sign over parental duties. He can raise the little boy as a single father. He had all the family support there. And she had family support like her mom and everybody else. So I don't understand. So at some point, he does give in and he signs the papers because she's making it convincing that, look, the baby's off in a great environment. She shows them this doctored AI version of these parents, and I find it really funny because, come on, no, this looked like it just was doctored by AI chat GPT. Come on, this doesn't look real. And they said, is this the baby? And she's like, yeah. They're saying she's beautiful. So he's asking her to send him that picture and any more pictures that they might send. And, if they reach out to her to let him know. So she said, yeah. So anyways, she said that she's gonna go. She's sorry for hurting him like this. And, he said he understands and he does have empathy for what she went through. And he'll be fine, right? So at some point, Brady said, are you okay? Are you having second thoughts? So he said, no, I just really wanted to hold her at least one time. So he just needed space, and he asked his dad to just call his mom and other family members to tell them about what happened with the baby. Holly called at some point, and, she was thanking him for saving her life yet again and being the hero, and she wanted him to come over, teach her some moves. So he said, not today. He told her briefly what happened with the baby and that, she's been given up for adoption. So she said, anything I can do? So he said, no, I just need some space to process. So she said, if you need me, I'm here, right? So I definitely feel bad for Tate because Tate really seemed like he's getting close to the baby and getting attached. And I think that once he held that baby in his arms, he would have become attached and fallen in love with that child. But Sophia had to do that, and she's talked to Melinda. Said, Tate bought it. He bought it surprisingly. He was angry at first, but he signed the fake papers, and everything is going smooth. And he can't find out that I double crossed him like this, and I abandoned our child, neglected our child, right? But this is a whole mess. So Sarah pays Xander a visit, and she walked in on him, bonding with his little girl and playing toys with her, and she found it really cute. So he gives Victoria to her mom, and she definitely gravitated towards her mom because she missed her mom missed her, and it was definitely fun to watch them, getting together, bonding over that. Even if it was for a short while, right? Because we know how Xander and Sarah definitely, after a great heartwarming moment, they start with the foolishness. So anyway, she was down for a nap, and they began to talk about their situation, that it's not really working out because Victoria is being affected and she's missing time with her mom. And Xander is talking about how he felt when Victoria was with her mom all this time, and she forgot who her father was, and then he had to reinitiate that again. So they're saying they need to sort out a better custody arrangement, even though they spoke about it on various times or different times. They need to sort it out once and for all. And Xander was all on board until Sarah wanted him to admit what he did to Philip. So she said, let's not rehash that, but I am thinking of a better solution because they're at a standstill. So she said, you know what? How about you go see Marlena? Talk about your rage, because I'm afraid of what you might do to somebody else. Not that you would hurt Victoria, but at the same time, you need to keep it in check because it's not really healthy for you or for Victoria to be around. So he said, let's say if I go through with this, right? Would you agree to join custody? So she said, yeah. So he said, in order to make this more formal, since it's been informal all this time, let us set up a legal separation document, because we've been, the trust is irrevocable at this point, and we need this in order to set up a custody arrangement. So I let Melinda draw it up, and she said that she's gonna let Justin oversee it. So I mean, you can tell that Sarah is definitely not all fully on board, but she just agrees with it, saying that it's gonna be great for Victoria, and they agree on that. But I don't think they're ready to separate or ready to divorce. But pride is everything, right, with them two. So, anyways, that was it with them. We go on to Gabby and Tony, because Tony called her over for a business proposition. So she was definitely interested because she want to know, like, what is Tony up to? Why is Tony calling her over, right? So he did also tell her that he's sorry about what happened to Ariana and that she's home safe, and she's glad to hear that. So he said, let me get straight to the point. I need somebody on the inside, a tiny mirror that can give me some dirt on Xander and Philip so that I can take back the family company. So she said, I really didn't want to go through with it because, Xander has been kind to me when Ariana was kidnapped. I don't really want to stab him in his back. So he said, like, come on, it's not above Xander and Philip to even, play dirty and all of that. So she went out, but he did catch her back in, reel her back in with the thought of her being the new CEO of the mirror, right? Because at this point, he talks about how, she doesn't have no creative control over a company that she's had successful over the years, and to answer to somebody else. So, this would be good for her to be CEO of the mirror and have control over her company. But he will also be a figurehead to kind of, advise her from time to time. So she's on board with that, but she wants all of that in writing. So he said, of course, I'll drop, the contract and let you oversee it. And she's going to read it carefully, because she asked him, like, can I really trust you? Because remember, I colluded with Anna to get you out of the mirror's CEO position one time. And he's like, it was years back and I needed to get out of that corporate world anyway. So, all is forgiven, right? But boy, imagine Xander helped you out, and this is what you're doing, Gabby. But I guess, everybody have to look out for themselves, because maybe if Xander was in that position, he would have done the same thing. But let's see. So Doug and Holly and Ari, right? So Holly came in first, and he's happy to see that she's safe, and he proceeds to hug her, and she said, "No thanks to you. Like, you got us in this mess. I thought you handled this thing with the loan sharks." And he's again feeling sorry for himself and sorry for bringing her through this. He tried to do the right thing. He tried to push her away so that she's not involved, and it didn't turn out good either at all. So, she tells him about the whole thing with Ari and how he wasn't honest or upfront to her about him dealing with Ari. And, he said that he only dealt with her because he couldn't get with Holly, because Holly was unsure at the time. And even though she broke up with Sade, he wasn't sure she was ready to be in something with him. So she said, at this time, like, everything is kind of messed up, and, you know, it is what it is, right? So he's saying that, look, I'm leaving town, and she asks, are you gonna talk to Julie before you leave to get some closure? So I said, she already tell me how she feel. I don't think it's gonna be any better if I go over there and tell her. So, I guess at this point before I leave town, everybody can get their licks in. So Ari walks in, and Ari said, including me. So he's saying, Ari, I'm sorry about what happened, and I'm glad to see you're okay. So Ari slapped him across his face, which he definitely deserved, right? So Holly comes over and says, look, like, um you definitely deserve that. So I wish you all the best when you leave town. So he's like, I wish you the best with Tate and everything. So she said, I find that hard to believe. So, she went, right? So Ari talks to him and said, look, let me get something straight, right? I did care about you, and he said, I care about you too. And she's like, past tense, I cared about you. Lose my number, lose my socials, right? So you really live in town? Yeah. So she definitely gave him a piece of her mind, not as much as she told her mother she was gonna do, right? So she ended up going home and talking to little T, that said that, she said that, look, as much as he did what he did, I'm gonna miss him, and I do still care about him, right? So Doug has packed up. I guess we'll see his departure on tomorrow's episode. But let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to my channel. Comment below your thoughts on today's episode. I will see you guys tomorrow.